Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another Experiences Living Abroad. I am here with the beautiful Brandi. How are you, Brandi?
I'm good, thank you.
Thank you so much for being here with us.
You're welcome.
Now, Brandi, tell our viewers, where are you from?
I'm from Houston, Texas.
And where have you been? You've been traveling all over teaching. Talk to us about that.
Yes, I've lived in Kuwait. We moved to Kuwait and to Oman. Um, and of course, as you and I talked before, the situation that I had in Kuwait caused us to come back to America and for me to help, start my company that I have.
So let's talk a little bit about that. So how did you even think that Kuwait was a place where, and you said we, tell us who we is.
My daughter, me and my
Okay.
daughter.
And how old was your daughter at the time when you moved to Kuwait?
She was 12. She was 12 years old.
Okay, so how
hmm
did you moving to Kuwait even become a thing?
Honestly, I joined a group on Facebook with other single mothers. It's initially started out with other single mothers because I'm a single mother. And then it went from being single, the group kind of changed a bit. So it's gotten open to more married women and, women, period. It's just
Mm-hmm.
open. But,
Mm-hmm.
anyways, I joined this group and I saw all these women that looked just like me that were single mothers. They were smart, they were educated, and they had all of this, you know, they were taking their kids around the world and traveling. And I was like, why can't I do that? But mind you, before I had joined the group, I was offered a position to teach in South Korea, and I was so close to taking it, but for one, I didn't have a passport at that time. I was terrified. I'm like, I don't know anything about the Korean culture. No one is gonna guide me through the steps. And the only person that I knew that was abroad was one friend, and she was in Dubai at that time. And so I was just like, yeah, I don't think I'm going to move forward with it because I was just scared, even though I was excited about it, but I was really scared. But fast forward to Kuwait, that's how I found out about moving abroad. The whole moving abroad experience was because of the group of women that I saw in this group. And so I started applying for jobs. No one really guided me. No one told me the steps to take to get there. No one, like, I didn't have that mentor or someone telling me, like, okay, this is what you need to do so you can be successful in this country. I just kind of went like just free balling it, basically just
Mm-hmm.
on a wing and a prayer with me and my 12-year-old. And of course, you're going to make mistakes along the way, and it's also a learning lesson so that way you can be able to help other people, like, hey, this is a heads up what you shouldn't do.
So let me go back for a bit. So you were terrified to take a position in Korea, and
hmm
then you went to Kuwait. So how did you get the fear out of you to say, okay, I'm going to apply to this position in Kuwait? And how did you even find that position?
So after that happened, so when I found the position in Korea, I want to say that was in 2013, 2013, and we didn't move to Kuwait until 2016. So that was basically like 3 years later. And I had already met the group, and then on top of that, my daughter, she and I had went to DC, and this is when President Obama was still in office. And so, you know, this was exciting to me. She would got to see she was around other Black children that were also passport holders. And by this time we had already had passports. Um, Passport holders, and they were traveling the world. So I was like, this is something that I should just get over. I think we can do this. And so, and that's exactly what I did. We After our trip back from DC, then I started applying for jobs. And I looked on Teachaway, which I totally wouldn't recommend doing, but I looked on there and I found the school that I was working at.
Okay. So you packed you and your daughter up, and just talk about some of the emotion and fear that you experienced because your daughter is special needs, and talk to us
hmm
about what you had to consider um, when moving to another country.
Initially, when I left America, like I said, that first time, I didn't have I was unprepared. Like I
Mhm.
kept asking, and mind you, all of as much as I loved that group of women, they were also toxic too because they didn't tell me the downside of living
Mhm.
abroad. Everyone
Mhm.
paints this glorious, beautiful
Mhm.
picture.
Mhm.
Oh, it's beautiful. I'm living my best life. I'm on a
Mhm.
yacht. I'm doing this. But they
Mhm.
don't tell you the possibilities of there's a huge language barrier. You
Mhm.
have to convert the money. No one's taking American dollars in Kuwait.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I mean,
Mhm.
it's just so many different things, but it was difficult. It was, I don't want to say it was difficult the first time, because the first time she and I were together. So we were able to bond and experience that together. So we were really excited and we used that as a learning experience. So the next time we went to another GCC country, then we would be like prepared. So there was no preparation. The only thing that I did was like pack things, sell things, and that was it. But now going forward, I know what to expect.
Okay. And tell us more about your daughter and her education through this living abroad experience.
So I worked at two different schools in Kuwait. The first school was a British school, which was beneficial for me, which was non-beneficial for my child,
Mm.
because their system is totally different from American education system. For me, it helped because it only like gave me more experience on my resume. So it, as a teacher, it just helped me. It was beneficial, but it didn't do anything for my daughter because their curriculum is a little bit more rigorous and it's a little bit more challenging. So for her, it was, she already has, uh, issues anyways with certain things. You have to explain things to her, and she's very hands on. So and she's got autism, she's got Asperger's, so she's highly functioning. However, the teachers, most of the teachers abroad, just not just in the Middle East, it's just abroad, period. They're not really, um, dealing with kids who have special needs, anyways, is not something that
Mm.
they're accustomed to doing. And it's kind of taboo to kind
Mm.
of talk about that. Like, oh,
Mm.
my kid has dyslexia, or my kid has this, or my kid has that. So, it's one of those things. But she initially started going to the schools that I taught at, and then as a parent and a teacher, I realized, okay, this is just not going to work.
Mm.
So I pulled her out of it, and she did homeschooling.
And so let's talk about the homeschooling. Was this something, I mean, teaching, of course, is your background. So was it something you felt like was an easy transition for you?
Yes, it was, because for her, um, she could go at her own pace. And
Mm-hmm.
then I could actually monitor to see what she's done,
Mm-hmm.
for the day.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, she's being overwhelmed with all this schoolwork, and, going to school, it's a lot. And then, truth be told, this pandemic has shown a lot. To me, it should have shown a lot of parents what your kids really haven't been learning at all in this education system, which hasn't
Mm-hmm.
been, excuse my language, which hasn't been shit.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't been learning anything.
Mm-hmm.
And, if you're a teacher, it shouldn't matter whether um, because a lot of them use the excuse, oh, well, the classes are on Zoom. That doesn't mean anything. Like, you have to adapt. Like, if you're a teacher, you know how to teach online or in person. It doesn't matter.
How did you find out that your daughter was struggling in that school? Like, was she communicating that to you, or how did you find that out?
She didn't communicate that to me. Her My friend was a teacher there, and she
Mm.
told me. And then also, I knew, based on what we went through in the States, like at her previous school, it was the same routine pattern. And I was just like, I can't go through this again. Like, this is just not going to be conducive to her learning style. Like, and what she's technically, she was getting 504 services, that's a under SPED, special education services. But she's not special education, because she doesn't, when that most people think of special education, it's usually students that are really, really needing those type of special education services where they have to stay in that self-contained class with the teachers all day. Well, she didn't need that because she's high functioning, and
Mm-hmm.
almost it was extremely almost to the point where they couldn't tell, but her teachers could tell. They knew something was wrong. They
Mm-hmm.
knew it,
Mm-hmm.
but it was just better for her to for me and her for her to come out of that situation and for her to be homeschooled.
Mm-hmm. And so, how do you think your daughter adapted to just the life in Kuwait outside of school?
She liked it better because I think here a lot of with her being autistic, socially they're a little bit, they have different a little bit of awkwardness. And so she was very, she's very talkative, inquisitive. And so she's really smart. And so a lot of kids here, they, I don't know, they didn't mesh well with her.
Mm-hmm.
But when she went, abroad, it was quite different. It was like they didn't look at those little
Nuances. Yeah,
idiosyncrasies of
yeah.
her that she has, and they look past that because they were so engulfed in the fact that she was an American. That's all they could see was that she was a real American girl. So that was it.
That's awesome. So after you left Kuwait and you had like talk about the teaching experience because here I know people glamorize moving abroad and
Hmm.
it's important for at least for my audience to see the good and bad. And so your experience in Kuwait with Teach Away was hectic. So talk about that a little bit.
So one of the reasons why I even started my company was because of this situation. Um, the schools are not even properly vetted most of the time. And
Mm-hmm.
this is not just about the Middle East, it's all over the world, in the whole international teaching world, where the schools are just not properly vetted. And so as a result, we, the educators and our families, we pack up our things on like a literally a wing and a prayer and pray that it's going to work out. And sometimes it doesn't, unfortunately, work out the way that we want it to work out. Um, but in terms of like, there's the good things. The good things are like, being able to travel. That's probably the best thing about it all. But, and to experience another culture or whatever country that you're living in. But the downside is there is no union, there is no teachers union. America has no jurisdiction in any of these countries that we are living in. So if you get in trouble in the country that you're in, whether it's from your school not handling the paperwork properly, you break the law, America will like wholeheartedly back out of that situation. Like, we don't know you,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of like leave you to hang to drive for yourself, depending on what the circumstances are.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but some of the bad things was like, there's unorganization. The schools sometimes are not properly, don't have supplies. So in America, teachers are kind of, okay, we know we got to come out of pocket to pay for things. But overseas, sometimes it can be like, I got to buy a laminator, I got to buy a copier, I got, all these things that we cherish here that most districts already have. They don't have, some of the schools don't have that there. Then you have to think about the housing too, depending on where you're living, it may not be what you're looking for, and I think a lot of Americans, they have so many bad experiences when they leave America to go teach internationally because they still carry that much, I want to say, like this arrogance about I'm American attitude with them, and they don't leave that at the international airport that they're at, and they
Mm-hmm.
take that to the country that they're living in, and then they try to impose their American ideologies on whatever country that they're living in, and it causes just so many different issues.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So you had your experience, and this is, not to be negative. We just want to be transparent and let people know just what to consider. And your recommendations of kind of finding reputable teaching companies if you want to teach in other countries. What recommendations do you have in regards to that?
Just you have to do your homework, because the two main companies besides myself, they charge like nothing is is for free. Like you're gonna have to pay for something, you know. And like one of them, Search Associates, I think it's like $300, but
Mm-hmm.
you don't get that one-on-one. You get assigned a recruiter, and then after the recruiter, you land your job. Because one of my clients was working with me and Search, and once she found the job that I helped her, and then they sent her the same lead, then they like closed her account out. Like they had no more contact with her at all. But it
Mm.
wasn't like that with me. Like I continued to keep in contact with my clients after the fact. And so that's kind of what you're looking for, is to make sure that, you're working with someone that's going to be able to help you, because you're not moving to like Texas to Detroit or Texas to California. You're moving across the world, and you don't have any family members there. And once you start selling your house, your cars, all of these things, it's like there's no turning back at this point. So you gotta go. Like you gotta go. And
Right.
you want to make sure that you have all of your everything in order, because I mean, if I would have known what I know now, then what I know now, I would have been way prepared. But it's okay. It's like I said, it's a learning experience.
After your Kuwait experience, and you had something interesting happen, like you got an apartment and you had things, right? And then you couldn't come back or something?
So the first contract ended with the first school in Kuwait, and so the second school, I was in a group on Facebook specifically for African Americans that want to teach that are living abroad in Kuwait. And so there was a guy, he was a principal, and he was specifically looking for us, and I commend him for that. Well, at the same time, got hired, and I thought it was a bit strange, anyways, how the interview had taken place. They didn't really ask me any questions. Like it wasn't like a very typical interview. So
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was strange already. But anyways, I was telling him that, and he says, "Don't worry about it. I already put a good word in for you." And so I just took it at that. And so, and then like a week later, he says, "Don't go to that school. The school is trash. They fired me." And I'm like, "Huh?" Like I done already went through this whole process. Well, actually, it was probably more like maybe a month or 2 months later. By that time, I had already went through the steps of getting documents done and paying for all of this stuff. So it was like, I can't say, oh no, I'm not going to go now, go back to Kuwait, because I've already paid all this money up front to do this stuff. So I was just like, yeah, whatever, I'm just going to go.
Mm-hmm.
So, initially the school was supposed to they needed us there badly. And at this particular time in Houston, Hurricane Harvey had hit, and so Houston was completely underwater. And so they needed us there. I had already completed my documents, and so they said on our end, and I contacted the Kuwaiti embassy and I said, look, I finished all my things on my end. Is it okay for me to go into the country and complete the rest of it once they do what they're supposed to do when they get there? And they said, it's absolutely legal. And yes, you can do that. And I
Mm-hmm.
said, okay. And I said, and I'm traveling with my daughter. And they said, okay, yes, she's fine. Just make sure that once you get your residency, you can sponsor her. And I said, okay. And that was the initial thing to do, because I had all of my documents together, unlike the first time. So get there, months pass, nothing. They asked me for my documents, and then my mother had it sent via DHL to the school. They got it. Nothing happened. Nothing. Months. Nothing. So in December, they're like, well, we're not going to renew your contract. So sorry, mind you. this was like, I had already paid all this money up front and everything. So I was like, okay. And I was just in such a bad headspace. And I was going on like countless interviews in the country, but nobody was like hitting, in terms of me getting an offer. There was one offer from like another school, but it was going to be like me losing money because I was going to have to pay for housing and things like that. And that's important. I didn't want to pay for housing, given the fact that when you're moving abroad, that's something that you don't want to pay for, is your own housing. That's a big portion of your salary, taken away from you, as if you have to pay for housing. So initially, the school, so fast forward a couple of months, we come back off of Christmas break, and my mother, she comes to Kuwait. And so after Christmas break, she goes back to the States. And then they were like, well, we decided that we're going to offer you a contract. And they offered me more money. But by this time, I had already found a job in Oman. I never said anything to them about it. And so school year was coming to a close. And so we went through the whole end of year process. And so then finally, during Ramadan, and it totally didn't dawn on me that it was Ramadan when I did this. And so my daughter and I, we were packing up our apartment in Kuwait, and I had already got the offer to teach in Oman. And so we packed up all our things and we moved to Oman. We were moving our things to Oman because initially the goal was to go to Oman after we, come back from the States and I get all of my documents done here in America. So we have a good time in Oman. And then when we come back to Kuwait, they were like, sorry, you can't come in this country. I'm like, huh? They was like, nope, your daughter can get in, but you can't come in. I'm like, huh? And they were like, no. And so they were like, the school put a block on you. And so the concierge for this, they have a concierge company that helps people when trying to get into the country with like visas and stuff like that. And so I knew who the girl was. She was a beautiful lady from Kenya, and she was helping me. And she says, they're going to deport you. And I said, what? And she said, yes. She said, you need to get on the phone with your school and find out what's happening. So apparently they knew that this was happening. Like from my principal, the director, all of them, they knew that they were doing. They
Well,
put a
why was
block.
it happening? Why?
I don't know. It could
You
be
still don't
very.
know?
No, it could be the fact that if someone doesn't like you in any country, this can happen.
Hmm.
Period. Like if they
Hmm.
don't like you, it's a political thing. Maybe you're a threat to somebody. You have more experience. And my principal just so happened she had no real leadership experience, and I'm going to school to get a doctorate degree and had more teaching experience than her. Of course, I probably would be a threat to her. I had no intentions of ever wanting to take her job,
Hmm.
but it could be a host of things. Someone said something to someone, to the director about anything, and
Hmm.
that could be the cause of it. We just don't know.
Hmm.
So at any given rate, um, we were able to I called my friend, and she luckily we had a maid, and she had the key to our apartment. And so she had given it to my friend, and she went to our apartment and she packed up all of our things for us and she got our stuff.
Wow.
Yep.
Hmm.
That's exactly what happened. And so and more recently, because of this pandemic, there was another school that I was supposed to be contracted with. And, they wanted me to come, and but they were doing things legally, and this school has been around for a long time. However, they wanted me to come to the country and not bring my daughter. Like they secured a visa for me but not my child. Now mind you, I had told them, like, I have a kid. Like, so
Hmm.
this was not something that they walked in not knowing that I
Hmm.
had a child. They knew that I had a daughter. So they basically rescinded their offer, and you have choices that you have to make. And sometimes those are things that we as adults and single mothers that we have to decide, is it going to be my child or is it going to be me? And again, there's the glorious, beautiful side of living abroad, teaching and traveling and learning about new cultures. But then the downside is, you have to deal with things like this. They may not pay you. You may not, they may do you like they did me. You may get blocked, or better yet, they rescind the offer or give you an ultimatum. Oh, you can come, but your daughter can't come. Like, who's going to leave their kid?
And it's important that you share that, because I met a friend before I moved to Portugal who, and I hope to get her on for an interview, and she went to Thailand to teach. And it was just a bunch of things that they just did not tell people. And you're already in another country, and it's just like, well, what you going to do? You going to leave? So I definitely, she had a wild experience, and I definitely want to bring her on to talk about that. But just wanted to share this for people who are, they see the signs in teaching. Just want everyone to be aware of what could happen and how to kind of line your ducks in a row and consider and do the research, instead of just being extremely gung-ho and naive. Just kind of, research reviews and people's experiences so that that you can make an educated choice. So let me ask you about how do you think this moving abroad, even with all the negative things that you experience, how do you feel like this has changed your perspective on life?
It's just made me more aware of the differences between how we have certain liberties here in America. Now, granted, as a Black American female, we have disadvantages, and that too. But, I can see the differences, however, it makes you respect other cultures. Like, you have to just be more humble and grateful, because, something so similar, simple, like being able to express yourself. If you're living in somewhere like China, you cannot do that. Just go on a tangent and talking about the Chinese government. For one, you can get arrested on site at the airport for talking negatively about the country in itself. And that's typically in most countries. You can't do that. You just have to, certain things you appreciate more. But those experience definitely didn't make me think like, oh no, I'll never, live abroad again, or no, I'll never teach abroad again, or anything like that. But it just makes you become more aware and more informed and making better decisions, because especially if you have a family, you cannot, just like you said a minute ago, you cannot just be so gung-ho and ready to accept any offer that you get, because what looks good may not always be good for you. You need to really do your research and really vet that school. Ask them questions, because if you don't, when you get there, it can go totally left. And honestly, you're going to probably go through you're going to probably experience things anyways, because schools typically put up a huge facade during interviews, and you won't know really what's happening until you're actually physically in the country.
Okay, so based on the experiences that you had, you created a company, a recruiting company, and talked to us about that. And I thought that the story, because we were on a panel together, and that's how I met Brandi. And just the story that you shared when you accidentally created your company. Talk about that.
It was out of frustration, and being deported was not a part of the plan at all for me and my daughter. And it was embarrassing. I went through depression. It was really, really bad, because although people had so many different things to say, like, oh, this was her fault, this was her fault. And no, it was not my fault. I didn't do anything wrong. I did everything that I was supposed to do, but I lost a lot of money, a lot of money. And although you can gain all those things back, but it was just the principle. I came back to America literally with $300. And with that $300, I decided to start a company. And so, I was just sitting there, and prior to this even happening, I was sitting in my classroom. This is before the whole thing happened. And I told another teacher, another Black teacher, and I said, you know what? We should start a company. We should start a recruiting company, and we can name it I Teach, and we can help teachers and we can prepare them. And she was just like, yeah, okay, yeah, whatever. She was agreeing, but she was just like, yeah, she wasn't really interested. But I was like, we should do it. It can be so huge. And I didn't really think anything about it, but I did. And so I just started it on my own, and initially started out with like consulting. And then it was a school that contacted me. And the school that contacted me was like, do you know any teachers that are looking for work? And I said, yeah, I know some. And so I sent him a couple of teachers, and then he says, okay, well, how much do you charge? And I was like, I don't know. And so I'm like, I don't know anything about recruiting. At this point, I didn't. Like, this was all new to me. I was only doing consulting, helping people and helping them prepare for their move abroad. And that was it. And so he was like, so I said, I don't know, like $100. He said, so I'm going to send you an invoice. And he said, so when you get back when you get it, he said, that invoice is not going to be $100. Approve it. And then whatever department you need to get it approved with, and then tell me how we can pay it to you. And so I was like, okay. And so it was like, I think it was like 4 teachers, and they sent me like $5,000 or $6,000 or something like this. And I was just like, I was wiping my eyes like, what? Like, is he serious? And so I messaged him, and then I was like, you know what? Let me call him. And so I called, and I said, I think you made a mistake. He said, no, I didn't. And he says, I'm just going to tell you, don't ever undervalue yourself. And he said, because if you do, then people will never respect you, especially in this industry. Now, mind you, this man was a white man telling me that. And he said, know your words and stick with it. And he was like, and especially because you are, and he said it just like this, a Black woman, you're going to have challenges that you're going to face against you, because people are going to tell you you can't do it, and it's other companies that are much bigger out there. And he said, just keep pushing forward. And he said, but I believe in you. And he said, and I think that you've got something here. And so that was it. And so he paid it, and after that, the rest was history.
The rest is history. I love that. Like, you made a mistake, honey. You called him with the integrity, like, look, I think this invoice too high. No, I love that. So how did he even find you to ask you to help him find teachers?
Because I had ads on Facebook, and I had ads on Instagram, and the ads would pop up in people's Messenger, the ads that pop up in Messenger. And then I think
so were the ads to consult for people who were looking to teach?
Yes.
Okay. And so you were looking for people who were interested in teaching, and he saw that and say, do you have some teachers? I'm looking for people.
Right. And then I think I had a couple of Google ads or something like this. And so, and that's how. And so he was able to find me from there. And so he just was like, I saw your ad, and I just wanted to know, do you know any teachers that are looking for work?
I just got to really give you kudos for your resiliency, out of going out to a country you didn't know, bringing your daughter, figuring that all, get deported, still pushing, and like, I'm going to start a business. Like, I hope you take the time to love yourself and just really be proud of yourself as to what you've done. Because a lot of people, shoot, myself, I just would have fell apart probably at the airport.
I did. I fell apart at the airport. I did. I didn't. I cried, but the person that was the most strongest was my daughter, because she was like really, really there for me through the whole entire time. And, I wanted to give up. And, she was like, no, mama, you can do it. And, she's been my biggest cheerleader. But it didn't really hit us until we landed in Qatar and we were sleeping in the airport hotel, and it's like, we're going back home. And I was just like, that's what I was crying in the shower, like ugly crying. I'm like, oh Lord.
So what advice would you have for those individuals who are considering moving abroad?
Just make sure that you do your homework, find out what it is that you want to do. If it's teaching, then what is it that where do you want to work, where can you see you and your family living, and find out all that you need to find out about the country, the laws. Those are super, super important. And if you have children, find out about the school itself, and their education system and how it works there, and how the school's accreditation process is, because that's important. Because your kids, if they're going to continue their education overseas, okay, that's one thing. But if they're going to come back to America one day to go to college, you got to remember that the school has to be accredited in order for them to get in any American university. So that's really one of the biggest things there, is just, have a plan set into place, and do not leave America if you do not have any money saved up, period. Like I did, the first time I left, I didn't do that. So if you don't have any money, saved up, it's not going to be a good idea to leave. I would wait. Make sure you have enough saved up for flights for every single body that's in your family, in case something goes awry and you need to get out of there, and you can come back home. And also like a whole maybe 2 to 3 months worth of salary in case the school doesn't pay you.
And I have had friends who, like, went to Spain or went to other places and they hadn't gotten paid for months. They did get paid, but it took some months. And so you just really have to know that. And just a quick question for those individuals who are listening who have kids, where do they even start trying to find the accreditation of, like, of the school that they're thinking about going for that country? Like, are there certain resources that people use, or is it just a matter of Google and digging down from that? Or what would you recommend for that?
So it depends on what school you're looking at. You usually on the school's website, it'll have the name. You can look under like the site map and look, and it'll say like accredited by who, and just do your research on there, or just Google like different accreditation companies. Advanced Ed is one of them. That's probably one of the most easiest ones for most schools to get accredited by. But you want to look for a more known one that's a little bit difficult, where their process is a little bit more stringent, because what happens is those schools, there are schools that pay off companies just so they can get their accreditation. I witnessed it happen before. So because I was on an accreditation team when I was in Kuwait, so it can definitely happen. But start there, and if not, then just if the school, the only way that the parents are going to find out about the school is if they're physically in the country. So if the school tends to have, most of the time the curriculum is geared toward the natives, the locals of that country, the nationals of that country. So, and it's not aligned with what our kids need. So if it's not in alignment with what you as a parent are used to having your children get, then you might want to go use a different alternative, whether
Or
it's
add some
homeschooling,
supplemental education.
yeah,
Yeah.
homeschooling or world schooling, whatever it is that you do.
No, this is extremely helpful. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank
Ladies and
you.
gentlemen, yeah, ladies and gentlemen, experiences living abroad. We appreciate it. We know you can be anywhere, and you've been here with us, and we thank you.